Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Clubhouse Picks, brought to you by Godzilla Wins. Clubhouse Picks is your go-to podcast for PGA predictions, tournament previews, and salty picks for the veteran golf fan. I'm your co-host, Jack Fredericks, editor of GodzillaWins.com, and I'm here with the greatest handicapping caddy west of the Rockies, Nate Perry. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
I didn't tell you about that intro, did I?
No, you did not.
Yeah, this is our first inaugural Clubhouse Picks. We're going to be talking today about the Honda Classic course preview. So we're very excited to start this podcast. It's been about a month in the works. We've been talking about it for much longer than that. So we're very excited to get this off the ground here. Nate, our handicapping caddy here with us. He's going to give us his best picks and talk about some stuff that other podcasts may have missed here. So before we get into that, though, we want to thank our partners at Target Trading. Target Trading Company, with all the fear out there about the economy and personal finances, many people are turning to trading markets to help support themselves and their families. Trading is risky, there is no doubt. Trading is not something that should be entered lightly, and that is all the more reason to get the proper training and education. Target Trading Academy is considered the #1 futures trading education company in the industry. Over the last 15 years, the team has developed successful, respectable, repeatable trading strategies at Target Trading Academy, delivers these trading methods to you in a highly structured and effective learning environment. Do you want proof? Check out the student reviews on Trustpilot and online. You're going to find 5-star reviews across the board. See why Chris says Target Trading Academy is a step to a better financial freedom and quality of life. Whatever the reason you may want to learn and do futures trading, you will not be disappointed with choosing this academy. But don't listen to the reviews only. Find out for yourself. Go to www.targettradingacademy.co. Sign up for a free virtual campus tour. Again, that's www.targettradingacademy.co. You can see Patrick and company in action and find out firsthand why they are the #1 trading education company in the game. Target Trading Academy. Go to targettradingacademy.co. That's .co, Target Trading Academy, or call 888-203-3731. That's 888-203-3731. And we thank Patrick for partnering with us. We love Target Trading. We love those futures. And just like the futures in the stock market, we love our futures on the golf course. So before we get into the Honda Classic course preview, Nate, some of our winners, some stuff like that, let's just recap a little bit about the Genesis Invitational. Tell us some things you picked up there. Start with maybe who won, some people who surprised you, some not so surprising things. Anywhere you want to take it.
Yeah, well, I mean, so from like a handicapping perspective, it's pretty boring, right? Because what you're getting is Jon Rahm winning. Jon Rahm's pre-tournament favorite. Cruz, went through it. And that's just kind of what you expect. And it's maddening from a handicapping perspective, especially the way that we do it. Because it's like I spend all of my time thinking about, mid-tier guys, live long shots, all of that sort of thing. And then what ends up happening is the pre-tournament chalk wins at like 8-1, 10-1, and everyone goes home as a loser. Unless you just bet that one guy and that's it, and that's fun. But there are very few golf handicappers that are willing to lay like those odds on a Jon Rahm type or on a Rory type in that type of field. I mean, the field is just too strong. It was 19 of the top 20 in the world. A lot of live guys, basically all the elite players. Riviera is a course that suits them really well. Just because Riviera is a course that tends to favor good driving, good ball striking. Everyone in the top 20 is good at that. They're all elite at that. That's not anything unusual. It's not anything that they haven't dealt with in the past. So from that perspective, it's just really frustrating to sort of spend a ton of time watching it, thinking about it, whatever. And then it's just chalk. You had a little bit of a heartbreaker because you had Homa, which right. you dipped a little down in the odds board than me. Like you dipped a little further down. I was sort of out of it by Friday. They were all gone. But you had a little bit of a different experience.
Well, Homa was the one guy I grabbed him at like, I think 28-1, kind of early in the week. He was a pick that a lot of people were touting. So it's not like I had some brilliant idea here. A lot of people liked Homa for this because for the Genesis, because he plays very well in California. He's been playing well lately.
And he's won there before.
And he's won there before. So that's always something to look out for when you look at these things. Hey, has this guy placed in the top 5, or has he won there before? He looked really good. He had an incredible Saturday and a frustrating Sunday. I suppose. I mean, he actually played pretty well on Sunday, but it's really hard to beat Jon Rahm. One of the problems with he's the number 1 guy in the world. One of the problems with these juiced tournaments where the PGA is putting basically encouraging everyone to play with major pots like this $20 million pot last week is who, even if you wanted to bet one of the pre-tournament chalks, who do you bet? I mean, okay, maybe Jon Rahm's the best in the world, so you bet him, but you've got like 15 others that are basically floating at 10 to 15 to 1 too. So the challenge to find any odds that are even remotely interesting, I thought Homa had a pretty good chance, and he did. I mean, he got me to Sunday, and that's really all you can hope for.
Yeah, and I mean, typically Homa's a closer. I mean, that's always been his reputation, is when he's in the hunt, he always does well. So it's I mean, there's no shame in losing to Jon Rahm, right? I mean, he's the hottest player on the planet. He's won 3 tournaments in this calendar year. Like, there's no shame in losing there. It's just annoying. It's just frustrating. I mean, you look at all the guys that were in there. Max Homa, highly touted, he finishes second. Jon Rahm finishes first. Scotty Scheffler's got a top 15. Finau's in the top 20. Xander makes the cut. Of like the elite guys, really the only one that missed the cut was Spieth. And Spieth makes sense. Spieth is like one of the only top players out there that really can't trade on his like driver and iron game all the time. He's a guy that makes his living sort of with a short game and sort of with the irons. But he's a guy that in a situation where it's a driving contest like Riviera often is, Spieth is often going to be at a disadvantage. So it makes sense that Spieth misses the cut there. But all the rest of these guys are elite in those categories, and they played basically like elite golfers. They are. That the tournament just shook out basically how, if you were running a computer simulation, it would, which is annoying.
It is, but Rahm has 3 wins in 2023, I think.
Yeah, in like 6 weeks.
Right. So that's just how it goes sometimes. The best golfer in the world is going to win tournaments, especially if he sniffs that leaderboard on Sunday. He's just going to play better than everybody else. He caught a couple breaks, but Homa had really good opportunity late in, I think it was like the 15th or 16th hole, to basically get within 1 shot in a birdie situation, and he missed it. And Homa was making his money on the greens that week. He was picking up tons of strokes putting. So to see him miss that, you just think, okay, well, that's what happens on Sunday. They miss those big putts because they're thinking about it. And he's thinking at Jon Rahm, it's in his head, or he just missed a putt. I mean, the putts are hard to read at the end of the day when the sun's going down like that. Those greens weren't always easy to read. So that was a tough one, but I'm always happy to see Homa do well there. I've really been happy to see Keith Mitchell in the hunt lately. I've been talking about him a lot.
Oh yeah, we've been talking about Keith Mitchell, just you and me. He's fun.
He is fun. He's got a beautiful swing. He's kind of been in the hunt lately, so he's got a couple good top 10 finishes, top 20 finishes in 2023 so far. And he shoots pretty well on Sunday. So sometimes those guys you think top 15 finish, but like he shot a 72 on Sunday. So he's not really a closer, but Keith Mitchell can actually golf on Sunday. So I kind of want to watch out for him in later tournaments. Maybe he gets one. You never know. So that's what you want to be looking for, is some guy who could maybe just break through at 35 to 1 at a crowded field. Could happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely. Yeah, he's just he plays with like a fun swagger, I guess. Like, and he looks like ridiculous compared to like all the other guys that are wearing like form-fitting like pants or whatever. Like, he's like out there in like basically like pleated pants, and he just looks silly. So he's fun. Yeah,
and that might be why I like him. I favor pleated pants as well. And I think if I'm on the golf course, I might throw on some, pleated pants, like just to. I don't need anything form fitting. I don't have like an interesting form. So I don't think Keith Mitchell does either. So just bigger clothes, maybe helps the swing a little bit. So maybe that's why I like Keith, because he's out of shape like I am. No offense to Keith. I love him. But could be an angle there. So let's move on, Nate, to the Honda Classic course preview here. We're going to handicap our contenders and pretenders in a little bit, our mid-tier guys, our long shots. But the first thing we want to do, especially with a course like the one in West Palm Beach, is just talk about the course, talk about the field, and what to expect in the Honda Classic this week, which starts tomorrow, February 23rd, in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Yeah, so the Honda Classic is always been a really tough tournament. The course is really difficult. There's water on 15 out of the 18 holes. The rough is probably going to be between 2.5 and 3 inches long, almost everywhere. And they'll also probably have it overseeded this time of year, which makes it especially sort of dense. Bermuda rough is already tricky. When you start to overseed it with other grasses, it becomes really tough to play from, which can be problematic for a lot of these guys. So, I mean, so all of those things together, right? So we have water in 15 out of 18 holes, deep rough. There's bunkers everywhere. If you try and bail out away from water, you're going to be in a bunker. Greens are fast. They're firm. This is going to be their first time really putting on true Bermuda greens in a little while, probably since Hawaii for most of them. So they're switching surfaces. It's a surface that a lot of them are comfortable on because a lot of the guys live in Florida. But it's still going to be a little bit of an adjustment, especially coming from the West Coast where it's mostly Poana. It's not very grainy. It tends to be a little bumpier and more random. So from that perspective, it's just a tough golf course. It's always windy there. It'll probably be a steady 10 to 15, 10 to 20, just constant. They're right on the water. And then, if it gets gusty, that's when the scores really start to get squirrely. I mean, nobody's won this tournament posting lower than 12 under in 10 years. So just right there, you're thinking like this is a hard golf tournament. Like this par 70, 66 is an unreal score here. Nobody's going to do that over 4 days. Probably if they do, they run away with it. It's just the sort of nature of this golf course. So that's what it looks like. We're talking par 70, shade over 7,100 yards for these guys. There are some gettable holes. The par fives are gettable, but there's only 2. So what you're trying to do is basically birdie the 2 par fives, survive on the other 16 holes. You can post 2 under, maybe sneak a birdie in somewhere else, 3 under. You're having a good day. So that's like the baseline for the course as far as it goes. These guys aren't going to tear it up. We're talking about the field. What? Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's stay on the course. Let's stay on the course for a minute before we talk about the field. What can you tell us about? And I'm putting you on the spot here, so you might not know. It seems like the most difficult holes are called the bear trap. I think it's 14, 15, and 16, I believe.
14, 15, 16, yeah.
What makes those holes so difficult?
Water everywhere. Water on the drive and approach for 15 and 15 and 16. Well, okay. So never mind. So what it is basically 2 decently long par 3s. They're probably going to play about 190 to 200. At least 175, maybe 200. Both of them have a lot of water. The green is almost surrounded by water on both, on 15 and 17. 16 is just a long par 4. It's probably going to play 460, 470. Depending on how the wind is blowing, it's tricky. There's water off the tee. So those holes are really where people are going to lose it. 18's not that challenging. 18 doesn't have any water. It's just a fairly gettable par 5. Guys can make an eagle there. Guys can make a birdie there. It's fun. It's exciting. But 15 through 17 is really where guys are just going to start just throwing shots away. It's the pressure of Sunday. A lot of the field, and we'll talk about the field in a second, aren't necessarily like hardened closers. So that's where it starts to get tricky, is when you're just seeing water everywhere. You're thinking we're almost there, and then things start to go sideways fast.
Well, and it seems like there's some holes. There's a stretch on the front 9, I think 4, 5, and 6, I believe, that are also fairly difficult. I think 6 is one of the more difficult holes as well. So it's not like you have an easy front 9 and then you're like, okay, well, I can lose a couple strokes on the back 9 because I had an incredible front 9. Problem with this course is, even without the wind, it's very hard to post a score of 68, 67, 66. With the wind, it becomes nearly impossible to run away with a tournament like this. Like you said, you really have to take advantage of the par 5s, and you have to take advantage of the luck too. I mean, that's something that a lot of the really top guys, if you watch golf every week like we do, when they hit a shot that they don't think is going where it's supposed to go, and then it ends up going where it's supposed to go, they sink that putt for birdie or eagle. And you have to be able to do that in a course like this, because otherwise it just eats you up and spits you out. So,
well, and 6 is really tough because, if you've played PGA National or whatever, if you played this course, you might be thinking, oh, 6 is pretty easy because you've probably played it as a par 5. If you've ever played there, because that's how it usually is on the scorecard. It's a short par 5, less than 500 yards, even from the tips. That's gettable. That's easy. But they drop 2 of these par 5s off the scorecard and turn them into just monster par 4s when the PGA Tour comes to town, which is the real difference. So they go from being like a pretty easy par 5, like, oh, let's have some fun, to like, oh no, now we're grinding.
Why is it? This is another question I have for you that's kind of putting you on the spot here. And maybe we can talk about this a little bit more with Shane Lowry and some others. But I've read that this course and some of those PGA Nationals, that a lot of guys, a lot of handicappers look for golfers who have played well in the Open Championship. Why might that be a good analog for a course like this?
For a tournament like this, it's probably mostly to do with the wind. Some guys just don't play very well in the wind. Is probably it. Lowry's always been a guy throughout his career that he's never been a very good putter. He's a pretty good short game. He's never been a really good putter. He's never a guy that's just going to like light it up and make a ton of birdies. So if we're talking about someone like Lowry in particular, he's a guy who likes this course because he likes just making pars. So he's always going to do pretty well in like a sort of lower scoring grind. Often the British Open is that type of low scoring grind. Guys are dealing with the wind. They're sort of having to manufacture shots to sort of accommodate that sort of wind in ways that, typical PGA Tour event, there's not a lot of wind. It's mostly what they call quote unquote target golf, which means that you get a yardage, your yardage, you just line up and hit it to that yardage. Ball hits the green, stops. Ball hits the fairway, stops. When you get to somewhere like PGA National, like the Open, you're sort of having to deal with a little bit more run out on shots. You're having to deal with a little bit more inconsistency when it comes into the green, firmer greens, firmer conditions, where you may not be able to land it in certain portions of the green and be able to keep it on there. So someone like Lowry, who's more creative, who tends to be better in wind, who can change the trajectory of his shots, tends to do well at those types of courses.
Look, as someone who shoots about a 140 every time I get out there, I can really appreciate a creative golfer. Lowry's always been fun to watch because of his imagination. Some of us need that on the course. Let's get to the field then. If we're talking about Lowry, just tell us, we don't want to give our picks just yet. We're almost there, but Nate, just tell us why this feels the way it is, why we're not seeing guys like Jon Rahm or Justin Thomas, Tiger Woods, who used to play here a lot, actually. Why we're not seeing guys like this in the field, and why a lot of the golfers we're seeing, if you're just a casual fan, you may not have heard of most of these guys.
A lot of it's just scheduling. The Honda just comes at a really kind of nasty scheduling time. And it's been hurt more and more in recent years because of the schedule. You get, the guys usually go to Hawaii. They'll usually play a tournament or two, the top players, they go play a tournament of champions, whatever. A lot of them don't play Sony. They take a week off, but then they kind of hit the West Coast swing, and they're playing, a lot of them play Torrey. It's just a great golf course with a great history. A lot of them are going to play there. Basically anyone that could play did play in Phoenix because it was one of the elevated events that the tour is doing. It's one of the 4 tournaments that sort of is rotating with the increased prize pool, and they're going to switch those out. But the Farmers at Torrey Pines and the Phoenix Open were both like part of those sort of elevated events. Yeah. A lot of guys are going to play Riviera too. So it really they need a week off, right? Because pretty soon we're going to get in a major season here in about 3 or 4 weeks. They'll do the Players in about a month. They'll have the Players Championship. 3 weeks after that, it'll be the Masters. And then it's major season. And then everything is focused on basically 1 week a month until the end of August. So these guys need a break, and this is a good time to have it. This isn't an elevated event, right? It's not the Genesis. It's not the Phoenix Open. A lot of the top players aren't playing it just because they played for a couple weeks in a row. and they just need a week off. And particularly when you're going somewhere like the Honda, it would be different if this was maybe like a little bit of a pitch and putt course, if it was a little easier, maybe you just go out there, stay loose, have a few rounds, take it easy. But the Honda Classic, PGA National is really tough. So these guys also just don't want to get beat up by a golf course for 4 days. Like, this isn't like a fun golf tournament. It's not an easy golf tournament. So the idea of having 2 weeks of like really high elevated competition, where you basically like every player in the top 20 in the world that's eligible is in. Basically, the exception is like Cam Smith, who's the only live guy that's still hanging around in the top 20. Everyone else is playing. So you're playing against the best players on the best courses. You need a week off. That's more or less the bottom line here. It's just a bad scheduling spot for these guys, on a lot of levels. Tough course, cross country flight, need a week off.
What that means, though, is for the golf predictor, the golf handicapper, the sicko, the golf fiend. This is a week that provides a lot of potential entertainment as well as a lot of opportunity, because there are guys here who are never going to sniff a top 5 in a crowded field. Look, I'm not going to either, so I don't mean to be dismissive of some of these dudes. They could. These golfers are all amazing, but some of these guys are just really going to be creeping around at some pretty interesting odds. And then some of them are not, is the other thing. Some guys who you would normally see at 55, 60, 75 to 1, you may see at 20 to 1, 30 to 1, numbers that we really don't like for those types of golfers. So with that, Nate, let's go ahead and get into our contenders and pretenders. So we want to start with some of our top guys on the odds, some of the chalk, and just go down the list. Tell us who you kind of like in the top with the odds. This is to win outright, none of the props or anything. And maybe some guys who you might stay away from. I can kind of guess. We'll say for this tournament specifically, let's say contenders, pretenders, anyone who is below 30 to 1. Because to be honest with you, these odds are nuts. So we'll just put that's only about 5 or 6 guys who are 30 to 1 to outright win. We'll stop at, if you're 30 to 1 or above, we'll put you in a different category, but 29 to 1 and below, we'll put you in the contenders or pretenders category. Who do you like in that grouping?
I mean, I think that of the favorites, I mean, Sungjae Im is clearly like the guy, right? I mean, he's
the only guy in the top 20 in this tournament, I think.
No, there's 3 guys in the top 20.
Oh, really?
So there's 3 guys in the top 20, and they're 18, 19, and 20th in the world.
Okay, yeah. That's right, because I read he's the only one in the top 17. So he must be 17th in the world.
Sungjae's 18. Okay. Billy Horschel's 19, and Shane Lowry's 20th in the world.
All right, there we go.
And they're it. And then there's 8 guys total that are in the top 50 in the world. So it's pretty weak in terms of, whereas like the previous tournaments, it was like, 48 of the top 50, 19 of the top 20 type stuff. So it's way weaker. But yeah, I mean, I think that Sungjae is the highest ranked player in the field per the, world golf rankings. He's 10 to 1 to win. He's plus 250 to finish in the top 5, and he's more or less even money to finish in the top 10. So he's a clear and like deserving favorite. I mean, he's good. He's been unbelievable here. He won in 2020. He had a top 10 in 2021. My reservation with Sungjae, and he's been playing great basically since like summer of last year. He's been unbelievable. My issue with him is that he missed the cut here last year. And he missed the cut here last year after doing the same thing that he did this year, which is basically play every golf tournament on the West Coast. So there's a part of me, I mean, Sungjae basically plays, we were joking about this earlier in the week. Sungjae basically plays any tournament that his agent can book him a flight to, right? He plays every week. He plays almost every week. He seldom takes weeks off. So you worry sometimes just about like, yeah, is this a great course fit? Sure. Is he an elite ball striker? Absolutely. Are there any real weaknesses in his game? Not right now.
But is he getting any sleep?
Could he just be tired? Yeah, I think so. I think he could be. I mean, Shane Lowry's definitely come in with a little bit of a weaker sort of, or like a less sort of strenuous schedule. he seems to have actually like tried to have sort of targeted this golf tournament, which is really weird. But he seems to like it a lot. So, there's that. So Sung Jae, clear deserving. Is he a guy that I'm rushing to the betting window to bet at 10-1 in this field? No. Just because I do worry about the fatigue aspect of it, which is something that you can't really quantify with statistics, at least not in the way that I have a computer model that, can do that. I can't, plug in how well does he play after playing 4 weeks in a row. But my guess is that there's probably some sort of decline at some point soon. We saw last year that definitely happened. So
we probably should do a trend, just Sung Jae Im fatigue trend.
Just track all, just like when does he like cap out?
Right, like when does Sung Jae miss the cut? Is it after 5 tournaments in a row, 7 tournaments in a row? Is it when he has to do an international flight? I wonder if we can get his booking agent and see which flights he's taking. Like, does he miss the cut when he's on Southwest, or is he able to charter a private plane out to West Palm? I don't know. I mean, he's a great golfer, but those PJs get pretty expensive. So those could be some interesting trends that some people might be interested in.
Yeah, and I mean, he's super weird in that way. He plays more than any other elite golfer does, by quite a bit. So, but yeah, I mean, we talk about it in basketball all the time, right? Where it's like back to back, this team's no good, this team's, blah, blah, blah. But Sung just plays all the time. So it's hard to say.
Those basketball trends are so annoying. I used to tail those all the time, where some team would be like the 82% against the spread after playing 4 games in 7 days, where 3 of them are home games or something, and then you just lose. So
right, yeah. So I mean, I'm looking at Sung Jae's stuff here. He had a pretty long layoff in between the Hero World Challenge, which is Tiger's tournament, which is like a no-cut event that's kind of just like a vacation. He played Century Tournament Champions, tied for 13. He misses the cut at Sony, and then he goes T18 at the American Express the week after that. He goes T4 at Farmers Insurance the week after that. He gets 1 week off. He goes T6 at Phoenix, and then he ties for 56 at the Genesis. So if we're looking at it, he's got to get some
rest.
He's got to be tired. I mean, he shot 74, 73 over the weekend in LA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're just looking at form, you could probably, or a guy that just needs some damn rest, like he probably might be a guy that just needs some rest.
Well, let's look at some other guys then. I mean, he's only 10-1. We don't really like to recommend you put your rent money on a guy who's 10-1 anyway, because this is golf and it's hard to win a tournament. So some of these other guys, you got Shane Lowry at 16-1, Aaron Wise at 22-1, Billy Horschel 25-1, Matt Kuchar 28-1. Anyone in there you even remotely like? I mean, I'm not even sure I like any of these guys.
There's none that I'm probably personally going to bet. Maybe Lowry shoots even par. Maybe somebody shoots 66 tomorrow. Maybe we get him live for like a little bit of a boost. Maybe drifts up to 30 or something like that. That's interesting to me. From this perspective, I mean, I think Lowry's probably the best. Just because he's really good here. I mean, he finished runner-up last year. He's 5 for 5 making the cut here. He's going to be good. He's going to be fine in the wind. He's good in tough conditions. He's a major champion. He's a proven commodity. I can't imagine a world in which I'd want to bet Aaron Wise at 22-1 and pass over Shane Lowry at 16-1. I guess it's sort of where I'm at.
When in doubt, we tend to think alike in some of the contenders that we like, where we look for guys who are playing well, have played well at the course that they're playing at, and have won not just tournaments, but majors, because those guys close. It doesn't matter if you've won just one major. If you've won a major, you close. That's just how it goes. Maybe there might be a couple instances that people like to point to Danny Willett in the Masters is kind of backing into one. But for the most part, Shane Lowry played really well when he won that Open. And he's a great golfer. So at 16-1, I mean, it's hard for me to think, oh, I really want to put a bunch of money on 16-1, or I really want to take those odds, because it's so short. But I mean, he's probably the guy. I've seen a lot of noise about Aaron Wise and some surrounding Matt Kuchar, who golfed pretty well last week, but Kuchar doesn't really close at all. So we're picking winners here, not top 5 finishers. You could probably always pick Kuchar as a top 5 or a top 10 finisher, and you're going to get your money back a lot of the time because he's always going to be sniffing the leaderboard, but he doesn't really close. So I don't know how you feel about him, but I've definitely been seeing a lot of people picking Wise and Kuchar when it comes to this sort of top brass.
I mean, for Cooch in particular, he's a little bit funky because his stats are like pretty good this year. For a guy that I kind of thought was probably on his way out, a guy that I wasn't really sure would be someone that would be in contention a ton. He's not someone that I'm particularly interested in betting, but he is good. I mean, and he has a lot of good stats for this type of golf tournament, mostly in that, and I'm not really sure how predictive this is, but he's been scrambling really well. Scrambled really well this year, getting up and down a lot when he misses greens. All these guys are going to miss greens. It's just the nature of this course. So if you're saying, scrambling is an important statistic because you're going to have some wayward iron shots, you're going to miss some greens, and pars are really important, then yeah, Cooch is probably going to factor pretty high up in your models. He's going to factor pretty high up in your handicapping. The way that I'm handicapping it is mostly ball striking heavy. Scrambling doesn't do a lot for you if you're having to take a penalty stroke from hitting in the water every hole. So like from that perspective, I don't love Kuchar, and I don't love a lot of these guys with elite short games this week, just because the penalties are so much for wayward shots that a lot of times they can get away with off the tee, that they can get away with their irons. And I'm not positive that just having like an awesome short game is like, you're basically gonna be scrambling for bogey after you dump one in the water. So I'm not sure that it's a huge consideration for me, but yeah, Kuchar's had an elite short game this year. He's putting pretty well. He's been doing a lot of different weird stuff with his putting, and he seems to have settled on something that works. So from that perspective, like, yeah, Kuchar's trendy. From my perspective, I don't love it. I would rather take sort of a more known commodity. I mean, Horschel's interesting to me. Just because he's kind of like the last elite guy that nobody's really talking about for this golf tournament, and every once in a while he just sort of pops. But yeah, I think that the reason Wise is getting so much love, and Wise just feels like the trendy sort of like wise guy pick, right? His tee to green stats are elite this year. Why? Because
he's the wise guy pick this week.
He's 25th in strokes gained tee to green for the whole tour. So that basically means there's 3 guys ahead of him this week that theoretically hit the ball better than he does from tee to green. Sung J M, Chris Kirk, Shane Lowry, and then it's Wise. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, like he's an elite ball striker in this field, but Aaron Wise also can't putt at all. So, I don't know if that's necessarily like the recipe either. And he's won, I think he's a 3-time winner on tour. I just don't love it. At 22-1, he just doesn't look like he's going to be that guy to me.
The approach game is what most of these wise guys are touting. If you read any of these articles, they're going to tell you that you need to be betting guys who are incredible at the approach, that's where everybody gets separation in this tournament. So It makes sense that they would like Wise, tee to green, etc. But again, like you're saying, it doesn't really matter if you're good tee to green. If once you get on the green, you can't put it in the hole. That's the sport. So if he's sitting around there, double putting putts under 15 feet, 10 feet, whatever, then you're going to have some problems. So yeah, that's some interesting stuff there. I suppose I've seen a lot on Wise. I haven't seen much on Horschel. I don't know how he's been playing lately. Probably not well if I haven't heard anything about him.
Not awesome. I'm looking at it right now. We got a tie for 30th at the Tournament of Champions. Not great. There's only 56 guys in that field. Missed the cut at Sony. Tie for 31st at the Waste Management. Missed the cut at Genesis. So Billy Horschel's like,
yeah, I know he missed the cut last week.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's crazy. In a regular tournament where you've got a lot of the guys in the top 20, you can shop. There'll be guys like Spieth who are 30 to 1. And you'll see Justin Thomas, Adam Scott, 22 to 1, 25 to 1. That's what makes this tournament so fun and so interesting, is that some of these guys you're looking at, you're like, this is a horrible price for a guy who is really streaky and is not playing well, like Horschel, who has potential. I mean, he can play well, but it's just the odds are not very good here. But where we do see some good odds, Nate, are in some of the mid-tier guys. These are guys who I would say will say 30 to 1 over to about 50 to 60 to 1. Guys who have not exactly long shots, but have really good odds and a good opportunity to win a tournament here.
Yeah, so I would lead this sort of segment with just like a little bit of history, right? So if we look back 10 years, go back to 2013 and 2014, we have two winners, both that are 300 to 1 odds. Following year, Padraig Harrington takes it down at 250 to 1 in 2015. And then we get a weird run of guys that are like more or less favorites. Adam Scott, Fowler, Thomas all win somewhere between 10 and 20 to 1. But in the last 4 years, it's gone back to that sort of like long shot mold. Keith Mitchell won here in 2019. He was 250 to 1. Sung Jae won here at 30 to 1 in 2020. And then in 2021, Matt Jones wins at 80 to 1. Sepp Straka wins at 125 to 1 last year. So if you're looking for a tournament to like get a little bit loose with some odds, like this is a good one,
Right.
because it's pretty wide open. It's pretty random. So just, if you're someone that's, I don't want to bet 50 to 1 because like I'm worried that like they just suck at golf. They might. They might suck at Riviera, but they might not suck here because they might just be the last guy that survives this tournament. So if you're sort of looking for value, this is like a fun tournament because there's going to be a lot of weird stuff that happens. There's going to be a lot of guys that hit in the water. Weather breaks can be weird. So you just try and sort of stack your lineup with guys that, you feel like at least maybe have a chance, at 50 to 1. I was talking to you before the show of the half dozen guys I bet, none of them are less than 50 to 1. They're all 50 to more or less 80 or 90 to 1, pretty much is kind of where I settled in for all my bets. You get a handful of guys in there, you'll still make some pretty good money, even if they come in. So with that being said, do we want to go through some of our mid-tier golfers, see who we like?
Absolutely. Why don't you start us off? Who do you like in the mid-tier?
Okay. So my first one that I like, and he's a guy that's sort of like a Korn Ferry hero. And he's someone that I've been watching since the Korn Ferry started happening, or since he's come back from the Korn Ferry, is Hayden Buckley is like my first guy. I got him at 50 to 1. It looks like he's still around 45 right now. If you want to go to DraftKings and bet him, he's at 45 to 1. He's plus 900 for top 5, plus 450 for a top 10. He was sort of like my first sort of circle play. And it's a play that I made mostly just based on how good he is off the tee. He ranks 5th in strokes gained off the tee right now on tour. He's 7th in total driving. He drives it long. He drives it really straight. And he hits a ton of green in regulation. He's 11th in greens in regulation. So if you're looking for a guy who is a ball striker, like we're talking about, like that's an angle, right? That's the sort of person that we're looking for is someone who has drifted down the odds board a little bit. He hasn't won on tour, but he's been playing pretty decent golf, and his ball striking stats look like they can be competitive there. Things that he struggles with aren't going to hold him back as much here. His short game isn't awesome. I've read a lot of these touts saying scrambling is an important stat. Nobody's short game is going to be awesome at PGA National. The rough is just, Bermuda rough is just so hard to chip out of. It's so hard to play out of. And it's so unreliable, the type of contact that you get, that like there's nobody that's just going to be elite from around the green there. It's just not going to happen. So if his short game's a little weaker, I don't think it hinders him as much for a guy like Hayden Buckley. But like the total driving being really straight and really long is definitely going to help. Hitting a ton of greens, yeah. All the rest of that stuff, it seems it's less of a concern for me, I guess.
Okay, so I've got him at 45 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. how about I'm gonna throw a couple at you here. And since we know Hayden Buckley, that's one of the guys you're riding with. I'll get you. I know you have a couple more you're chomping at the bit to talk about, but let me throw some at you that I've been seeing around a lot, and just tell me why you might be leaning towards them or you're getting off the train real quick. I got a lot of names here in this category. Let's start with my boy Adam Svensson at 30-1. A lot of people say Adam Svensson, really good approach game. He lives in West Palm, which I guess is important. Not like every golfer doesn't live around West Palm, but apparently that's important. So I guess he plays here all the time. What do you think about Adam Svensson?
Yeah, I mean, we look at the same sort of articles, right? I mean, we consume tons of
there's
golf
only
media.
so many.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hence why we're making a podcast.
Right.
Yeah, Svensson's not a guy that was on my radar. The more or less the rationale that I've seen sort of bandied about is that he had a top 10 last week at Riviera, which is a ball strikers golf course, and that's true, I guess, kind of. Riviera is probably like not a comp that I would make for a guy like Riviera is just a different type of golf course. It's more classic. It's a little bit more target based than PGA National is. Sure, does it reward good ball striking? Yeah. Is it like the type of course that you just take your game from Riviera to West Palm Beach and like just continue on? Not necessarily. For me, if I'm looking at guys that are playing at PGA National and West Palm, I'm looking at guys that play well at Harbor Town, which is another coastal course with a lot of wind, with Bermuda greens. That's a ball striker course. I'd be looking at they play the Sony Open in Wailea. That's like another sort of really comparable course in that it's windy. It tends to favor really good iron play and really sort of precise ball striking. Somewhere like Riviera, not as much. Riviera is soft. It's not the weather's not typically an issue there. It kind of was this week, but that's not normally the case. So I would be reluctant to say like, oh, Riv is like a good comparison because, ball striking or whatever. Good ball strikers play well anywheres.
This is the frustrating thing about touts sometimes is, so you like Adam Svensson because he tied for the 10th at the Riv. But then you also like Billy Horschel, who didn't make the cut. So we can't just cherry pick our statistics, I guess, our standard for this touting. Like if you like guys who played well last week, then you have to throw out some guys like Horschel. But we'll see. I don't know. Svensson, he could have a good week. You do like to see some of those guys carry some momentum over to the next week, but I agree the courses are not the same. It hasn't rained in West Palm in like 3 weeks or something, so those greens are going to be really fast. Was a lot different than last week. California, it's been raining a lot, so we'll see.
I guess like sort of like deeper dive into Svensson, if we're really trying to like nitpick that one in particular, you're looking at a guy who's 171st on tour and driving distance. He's 98th in driving accuracy. He's 176 in total driving, and he gains barely a stroke off the tee, like not even a stroke off the tee. So if we're looking for a guy who's just elite, like level ball striker, Svensson's stats don't necessarily match up with the eyeball test of like what people have been saying, which is like, oh, Riv's a ball striker course, blah, blah. Like his stats don't necessarily match that assessment. He does have a pretty good iron game, but off the tee, he's weak enough that I think that like you could be concerned that he could just start spraying him in the water somewhere.
Right. Now, another guy I've seen a lot of, and he's 35-1, so just a little tick down the odds here. And he's been coming up all the time on any of these golf websites that we read. Jonathan
Vegas.
About
Chris Kirk? Oh, Johnny Vegas.
I was talking Johnny Vegas. We can talk about Chris Kirk in a minute.
Oh God!
But I've been seeing a lot. I was gonna skip Chris Kirk. I was maybe gonna give like a little tip of the cap to my boy Harris English, just because. Okay. We'll get to Harris in a minute. I kind of like his game this week, but Johnny Vegas. I don't know. I've been seeing him come up a lot. What do you think?
A lot of people like Johnny Vegas because he drives the ball really well. He's always been that guy. He hits the ball a ton, and people seem to I mean, Johnny Vegas has been out there for a while, but the stat that's getting everybody, and I'm sure this is the stat that's like, people are just like gushing to bet him, is he's number one in strokes gained off the tee this season. He's leading Jon Rahm, he's leading Rory, he's leading all these guys who are elite off the tee. And Johnny Vegas gains basically 0.923 strokes a hole or a round off the tee. So he's gaining almost an entire stroke on the field off the tee.
That's incredible.
Which is huge. So from that perspective, like, yeah, like he makes sense. He makes sense.
Why is he not the number one golfer in the world if he's gaining a stroke off the tee on everyone?
Because all right, put it this way. Johnny Vegas gains 0.923, so basically 0.92 shots around off the tee on just the average field. He loses 0.95 on the greens to the field. So however good he is off the tee, it's just immediately neutralized as soon as he gets on a short surface with a putter in his hand.
Yeah, well, I can sympathize with Johnny there. I've definitely been in that position.
So, I mean, that's like what you're like sort of like looking at is, and the reason that he's trendy and that people love him is because he's number one off the tee. He's number 4 tee to green, largely bolstered by his off the tee stats, although his approach game is quite good. Everything's really good except for the putter. So what you're hoping with someone like Vegas is like, just find an average putter for a week. Just keep the ball striking where it's at, Playboy. And just maybe don't 3-putt like a ton. Like, you're looking at a guy that makes 30% of his putts from inside 10 feet. So he's 125th on tour. He 3-putts about 5% of the time that he's on a green, which is 205th on tour. So you're really hoping that he like finds it in a big way. Not just in like a little way, like not just like maybe we have just like an average tournament. Like maybe like we just like stop just hemorrhaging strokes every time that we like have a putter in our hand, and we just stop acting like this is like, like we're fighting a wild animal every time we're on the green.
If you're struggling that poorly on greens, it's a really hard sell for me to take that guy, because you have to just be able to find something that you haven't been able to find possibly your entire life for 4 days. And that happens in golf, but it doesn't happen that often. And so maybe Vegas is in the hunt Friday, Saturday, but when it comes to Sunday and you get down to those big putts, he's not winning that tournament. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
To sort of like put a close on some talking about someone like Johnny Vegas. He's someone that I would absolutely love if he was like 60 to 1.
Oh,
even if his ball striking stats were, even if he was just, even if he wasn't leading off the tee, he was just top 10, maybe he was top 30 in like total ball striking. Then he's a guy that you're like, all right, we just find like a little bit of a putter. We got some pretty good odds here. Let's keep this thing going a little bit. But at like his current odds of like 35 to 1, like to bet on a guy to just get a hot putter for once this year at 35 to 1 just isn't a thing that like I could really justify. 50 to 1, 60 to 1, maybe. 35 to 1,
no. Well, let's talk about another guy at 35 to 1, a guy I've been following with a lot of verve my entire life. Harris English. What do you think about old UGA grad? A lot of UGA grads are on tour right now. They all play particularly well. What do you think about Harris this week? The only reason I bring him up is because he's been playing well. He played well at Genesis. This is not a crowded field. I think there's an opportunity for him here to maybe insert himself in the top 5.
I mean, all right. So the thing about Harris is, historically, this is probably the type of tournament that he'd be good at. Harris English has typically played well places like Sony, places like Harbortown, places that are comps for sort of what we were talking about earlier. Right now, I'm not sure Harris got that game. If he does have that game, he hasn't shown it yet. And we're still dealing with fairly limited sample sizes in terms of like this season. So
Sure.
obviously these stats are going to get a little bit sharper as we go on. By the time we get to the Masters, we're going to have a pretty good idea where these guys are at. But I mean, Harris right now doesn't really do anything well off from tee to green. You know, he's short game's been solid. He's always been a good putter. But the ball striking just hasn't been there. So I don't love a guy like Harris this week. He dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I think it's fair to wonder if his game just hasn't really caught up yet. So he's another guy that I don't love for those reasons. He's just a total liability off the tee right now, and his iron game is much better.
Well, he begs to differ, but he'll take your
I'm sure he
analysis,
does.
I suppose. Yeah, I think he thinks he's a lock here to finish in the top 5.
I mean,
I
I'm
think he
proud of
likes
him. I
this
hope,
field.
you know, yeah, go dogs.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't need your encouragement.
No, he does
Okay,
not.
so let's throw out a couple more you kind of like. Maybe some guys you actually want to tout. I mean, I could throw out some more here in this mid range. There's a lot of fun ones, but maybe like one or two who you kind of want to tout here that you think might have a chance to win.
Yeah, so there are a few guys, and like I said, like I'm digging pretty deep down in the barrel here in terms of odds. So, you know, these aren't like don't like look at this and think like, oh, lock. I'm just trying to sort of give you an idea of like sort of where I'm at with this. And what I'm trying to find is guys that are not totally out of it. You know, I'm not trying to like bet like, you know, Ryan Moore or whatever, or like Pearson Cootie at like 250 to 1. But like guys like have like legit like real shots. And Eric Van Rooyen's like pretty much like right on the cusp of guys that like I'm just like barely able to justify betting at 90 to 1. Mostly because I feel like the ball striking is there. Tee to green, he's 32nd on tour right now. The only weak spot is with a putter, but he's not been like horrible with a putter. He's just been like slightly below average. So he's a guy that doesn't need to just like suddenly turn the whole world around with his putting stroke. He just needs to like maybe just like a slight incremental boost or go to a course that maybe doesn't favor putting as much. So someone like Van Rooyen, someone that I was looking at a lot. I mean, he's gaining strokes across the board except with the putter. Great off the tee. Tee to green, he's elite. Short game's been fine. There's not a ton of weak spots there. He hits a ton of green in regulation. So that's sort of what I'm looking at. The other sort of sneaky stat that I guess we should talk about now, and it's one that's kind of popped up as I look at guys. I'm like, oh, like this is a guy that looks like they would be a good fit. And they all sort of have this stat, and it's sort of been a recurring thing that I've seen, is when you look at their stats, you can see what they average on par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s, right? There are a lot of par 4s on this golf course, and there's a lot of par 3s on this golf course, but they need to play the par 4s well to do well here. That's just the bottom line. They're not going to make up a lot of strokes with par 5s just because there's not very many opportunities to. So those sort of decrease in value. So what you're looking at is guys that play par 4s well. That's most of the holes they're going to play on any course, but they take up like sort of added significance here. He's 26th in scoring average on par 4s this year. You know, he averages just a shade under par, 3.95 strokes per par 4. So someone like that who you know is comfortable playing these sort of long range sort of approach shots, 150, 200 yards, to play those holes well. Those are guys that I also sort of look for. So Eric Van Rooyen's a guy. Hayden Buckley, who I just talked about, is another guy. Both of them excel at par 4s. They're both really high level ball strikers. So those are two guys that for sure I'm betting.
Not buying the Lee Hodges stock. See a lot of Lee Hodges out there.
No, I mean, I think Lee's gonna have to show me something first. He's just like he's such a mess putting. He's so bad at putting. He's like they're guys that hit the ball really well and putt like trash out on tour are a dime a dozen, and Lee Hodges is one of those guys. Like as near as I could tell. So I mean, he's actually been like okay, but the short game sucks. He's bad at chipping. So I mean, he's not a guy that like I'm in a hurry to bet on. He hasn't won yet. He hasn't really had a lot of awesome results yet. So no, Lee Hodges isn't really a guy that like I'm in love with. No.
Yeah, I get that. Danny Willett's another one who I've
People
seen
like
a little
Danny
bit.
Willett.
Yeah, they
People
do.
like
Well,
Danny Willett.
I think I don't want to misspeak. I'm pretty positive I've seen him around the leaderboard, like playing relatively well lately. So I think that's part of it. You know, he's
Well, I mean,
always
his
been a
game
guy
totally
who,
went in the toilet for a while.
yeah.
He won the Masters, and it was like his career just ended. He was just like, all right, that's it. Like, we don't play golf anymore. Like, we don't practice anymore. We just show up. We're the Masters champion. He's played okay this year. I mean, looking at he finished. He's got a second place finish from earlier this season. Before the tour wrapped around. He started 8 events this year. He's got a second. He's got a couple other top 25s. He's made a little more than half his cuts. I mean, I guess you can like Danny Willett, but it really just I see very little. I mean, I keep coming back to this, but I think it's important, right? Like, you have to have some sort of framework for which you analyze these guys. And a lot of these tournaments, you can see paths for different types of guys to win. Get the driver under control, maybe these guys can contend. Get the short game under control, maybe these guys can contend, even though other parts of their games are weak. At PGA National, in the Honda, there have been last 5 winners. We'll just call it last 5 years. 4 of them led the field in strokes gained tee to green. The only one who hasn't was Sepp Straka last year, and he was 4th. So you have to be an elite level ball striker. And to look at somebody like Danny Willett, who is not an elite ball striker, and say, like,
No.
awesome chance, is a really big ask, because what you're asking for is like a full turnaround of all of their previous stats, last 8 tournaments that he's played, and you're asking him to reverse all of those really pretty pedestrian numbers and saying, like, all we got to do is just find some fairways, find some greens, and ride that hot putter, baby. And that's not necessarily a winning formula at PGA National.
Here's what I think people do sometimes when they, even some of the guys who tout these picks or write for websites, when you get to a field where there just isn't a lot to choose from, a lot of guys who are flying under the radar, I think that they scan the odds and they look for guys that they recognize, like Danny Willett, and then they look up why Danny Willett could maybe win, and then they form their analysis based on name recognition instead of doing what you are suggesting, which is whatever your framework is, be true to it. That's why a lot of golf touts or any tout will say, hey, here's my computer model. I ran it through the model. This is my system. People have systems. They use these systems all the time. We need a framework for analysis. Nate's framework for analysis in this tournament is tee to green. I think a lot of guys, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, because this happens in a field that's just not that crowded. You just kind of start looking at guys who you kind of know. Padraig Harrington, I know who that guy is. Maybe he wins. Webb Simpson's 90-1. Maybe Webb Simpson wins. Like, Webb Simpson's been playing horrible. He's not going to win. Charlie Hoffman at 100-1. Hoffman hasn't sniffed the leaderboard in forever either. But these guys are known names. They're personalities on tour. They've either won before or they've come very close to winning. That's very different from guys like you're saying, not to really beat down on Pearson Cootie, I believe, down there at 200-1. No, that was kind of mean. I mean, look,
he was just a name that I pulled out of the hat. Pearson Cootie's fine.
Right. Like, that was a little hurtful. I mean, there's guys who are like 600-1 here. I don't think Andrew Landry at 500-1 has much of a shot. But hey, I've seen JB Holmes around before. He's 600-1, so you never know. So yeah, I mean, that I think, Nate, your point is an important one, that whatever you decide is going to be the key to winning this tournament, you have to use that framework in order to select who you're going to pick, because otherwise you are going off name recognition, which is a really bad way to bet a golf tournament.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So if you're the guy pulling Danny Willett out of the hat to sort of give you an argument that you maybe don't see when you just get the 25-word snippet from Golf Digest or PGA Tour or wherever you're getting your information, right? If that's the only source that you're getting your information from, and you're like, oh, well, they all love Danny Willett, I love Danny Willett too. Like, think about this. Danny Willett is 12th in putting on tour this year. He is 135th in his iron game. He's 138th off the tee. His stats are completely bolstered by the fact that he's the best putter on tour from inside 10 feet, and he one putts constantly. Because he gets up and down all the time because he misses tons of greens. So of course he one putts constantly. So like if you're looking at him and you're just a lazy tout, you're like, oh, great putter, good player. Just all the rest of the game needs to come together. But this guy's elite on the greens once he gets on the greens. Sure, you can tailor an argument to that, but it doesn't work necessarily at PGA National. I'd take someone like Danny Willett at long odds somewhere where it just turns into a putting contest where ball striking is sort of minimized because these guys don't really have any problems. Not at this golf course, though.
And that's an interesting point, and one that is really important when you're looking at some of these stats. You say, oh, well, the putting inside 10 feet is elite, incredible, what have you. Well, yeah, if he's missing the greens on his approach and now he's got an easier shot to get near the hole, and now he's one putting because he's only within 10 feet. Not that he's not an incredible putter, he is, but it's one thing to one putt after chipping from the rough from a couple feet out, then to two putt when you're like maybe 35 feet, but you're on the green. It still counts statistically. So that's an important distinction. And those are the types of things that we really want to be able to look for. That's why you really have to look at these numbers in a certain way, and you have to watch. Anyone who watches Danny Willett knows that he's sort of a mess around the greens until he gets on the green, and then he's pretty elite.
And then he's awesome. So I mean, it's just tricky sometimes because you see people sort of cherry picking weird stats that don't necessarily line up with the particular type of golf course, right? So it's just, the course is so sort of important when you handicap these things, more so than other sports. Like football, doesn't matter what kind of field they play on. Basketball, it doesn't matter, what kind of court it's on. Baseball, it doesn't really matter often if they're inside or outside or day or night. But golf courses do matter for handicapping golf tournaments. It's the most important thing in terms of just like the environment they're playing in for any sport. Golf and tennis. So I think it's important to sort of take those things into account. Those environmental factors.
People say you're playing against yourself in golf. That's not really true. You're playing against others when you're in a tournament. You're trying to beat them, but you're also playing against the course. The course is what causes all the problems. And any golfer who's ever played a difficult course knows that you can be humbled very quickly. You can feel like you're a pretty bang up golfer until you get on a real course, and then all of a sudden you're shooting up the 100, way over your own handicap. So, absolutely, that's very important. Are there any? I kind of want to get to some props, although I don't have much prepared, so we don't have to spend too much time on that. Then we'll just lay out our picks very quickly. Are there any absolute long shots? I mean, I guess Eric Van Rooyen at 90-1 is, I would consider that pretty much a long shot, but anyone else you just love?
That's pretty much as deep as I want to go with a lot of these long shots, to be quite honest with you. All the rest of them, I don't think you're going to find anything that much deeper down. I mean, we loved Malnati a few weeks back. We were like all over him at the Pebble Beach tournament, and he played okay. But this isn't a good course for him. I mean, a lot of these guys down here, like when you get down to like the 150s, like, you're looking at Harry Higgs, like, no, like he's not ready to win. Luke Donald at 180-1. No, I mean, there's just nothing really there that's that exciting. It's mostly washed guys and rookies.
Could you imagine Harry Higgs like winning a difficult course in the wind? No way. I'd
love to see it, but I've also like followed him in Truckee at the golf tournament out here at the Barracuda and just watch him like melt down because like, he hit like a pine tree. So like, no, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, just
because like it's like hot and his pants are too tight. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not gonna like sit here and think that he's gonna compete.
No. Harry Higgs is not on a difficult course. Maybe in a parking lot of like putt or whatever, he might do okay. But out
driving range hero.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, before we get to what we'll do next is we'll do the props. And what I mean by that is we'll do some top 5 and top 20s. If you want to get into some of the more exotic stuff, we can. You don't have to. Then we'll just lay out maybe our top 3 picks here But before we do that, we really need to thank Ignite 45, Nate. Ignite 45 is one of our sponsors here for Clubhouse Picks. Nate, if you're a small business owner struggling to generate leads and revenue, then this message is for you. In today's economy, a winning digital strategy is a must. Without it, your business could fall behind and lose out. Many business owners struggle with outdated websites and no real presence on Google when people are searching for their services. But don't be discouraged, because Ignite 45 can fix that. They design great websites that turn visitors into paying customers and create SEO strategies that rank your business on top of search results. Nate, we may actually have to use Ignite 45 in our own business interests here. This is pretty great. Ignite 45 is also the first digital agency dedicated to helping your business reach millions on your social media platform of your choice. If you're ready to see real results and work with a digital partner that shares your values, then give them a call today at 720-740-1776. That's 720-740-1776, or visit www.ignite45.com/Godzilla. Use promo code Godzilla to save 100 on your digital needs. Okay, that's Ignite 45. Great partner with us. We're very happy to have them partnering with us for Clubhouse Picks. So let's talk about our props here. These are, and we'll just open up the field because there's a lot of things that you can do in golf. You can bet head-to-heads. You can take which Australian is going to post the lowest score, top 5, top 20s, who makes the cut, first round leader, second round leader. Is there anything in here that you might take a gander at? We know that out there in Nevada, you don't really have the option to actually bet these, but that doesn't mean you can't pick a couple.
Yeah, I mean, so I haven't taken a ton of look. Like I look at sort of the place market quite a bit, top 5, top 10s, because that's really sort of accessible for a lot of people. But in terms of like the exotic stuff, top South African, like I wish I had those funds odds, but I just don't even waste time on it because I just can't bet it here in Nevada.
Yeah.
But if I'm just looking at props for guys that I like, that I sort of like, like a little bit outright, but if there's like a little bit more value way to bet them, Russell Knox is a guy that I bet outright. He's 110. He's plus 11,000 on DraftKings right now, so 110 to 1. He's 9 to 1 to finish in the top 10. That feels like a guy that could, get there. 9 to 1 seems pretty solid to me. He hasn't been awesome here lately, but he has played this tournament well before in the past. He lost in a playoff about almost 10 years ago. So he's had a couple other sort of top 10s. He's a guy whose iron play looks like it's getting better. So he's someone like Russell Knox at plus 900 for top 10 feels good to me. I like that play. If you're looking down the odds board, I know we just said like, oh, I don't like any guys at triple digits odds, and then I pulled him up and was like, oh, he's drifted a little bit. I think that Russell Knox is a guy. I mean, you're just taking flyers here at this point, right? But that's definitely one of the props that I sort of think is probably worth taking a hard look at.
And it has good value. I mean, the one that I'm kind of salivating at is Matt Kuchar at plus 600, just because I think 6 to 1 for that's top 5. So Matt Kuchar finished in the top 5 at plus 600. I think 6 to 1 odds is pretty good. Kuchar's a guy who always sort of seems to be around there,
especially in weaker field events like this.
Yeah, he's a guy who he's another guy who you might even take first round leader. You know who else would be kind of an interesting, I don't know his odds, but Charlie Hoffman loves a Thursday
he does
game. I don't know what his first round leader odds would be. I'm trying to look on DraftKings. I'm looking at, this is terrific entertainment here. End of round 1 leader. Let me see if I can find Hoffman here, because this is probably one that I would take if I had the opportunity. Yeah, plus 8,000. So those are some pretty good odds for Hoffman to be leading at the end of round 1. That's a long shot there, but Hoffman likes to play on Thursday and then kind of disappear the rest of the week. Yeah. That's always been his modus operandi. That doesn't mean that he can do it here, but he could. So I kind of like that. Kuchar top 5. Those are some ones that I really like. There's some top 10s that I might consider. But again, these are guys that you kind of like to win outright. So sometimes I like to adjust my top 5 and top 10 just live, like on a Saturday, and say, okay, well, this guy's got some pretty good odds to finish in the top 10. But it's hard to see that field clearly until the first cut. But we'll see. I think if I had to guess, if I had to put money on a couple of these, I'd say Kuchar top 5, Hoffman maybe round 1 leader. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the other one that like I sort of like was looking at is like top 20 odds. I'm here on DraftKings. If someone like Robbie Shelton's the guy that like I was sort of looking at for a while in this golf tournament. He's started 11 tournaments so far this season. He's finished in the top 25 and a little over half in 6 of them. So, and you're getting plus 220 on him to finish in the top 20 and like a pretty weak field in a tournament and a course that should suit his game pretty well. So something like that, like just from like a pure numbers perspective, he's already made over half his cuts. You're getting 2-1 on your money. Like, I think that's probably like the sort of angle that I would take there. This is a pretty weak field. He should be able to manage the top 20, even if he can't win. I'm not sure he's ready to win yet. He hasn't shown that he's capable on this stage, although he has won on Corn Ferry a couple times. So something like that is sort of just like from a pure numbers perspective, like getting over 2-1 on a guy who makes a lot of cuts and finishes in the top 25 a lot. Like, I like that play.
This is a tournament too, where if you think a guy's going to make the cut, he's got a damn good chance of being in the top 20. I mean,
yeah,
there's just, if you like,
there's going to be weird names
your guys. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, maybe, Sepp Straka's in the tournament. He won last year. I don't know how well he's playing this year. I haven't seen him play this year, but he's 50-1 to win the whole thing, but he's 11-1 to finish in the top 5 and 5-1 to finish in the top 20. So, 5-1's not great, but it's not horrible either. Throw a couple bucks on Sepp. Maybe he finishes in the top 20.
Sepp's been playing okay. I mean, nothing awesome. The iron game is good, like it usually is. I mean, he's probably a fine play. I mean,
well, that's what he needs. He needs a good iron game.
Okay season. He's got one top 10 this year. Couple top 25s. Made most of his cuts. I mean, so from that perspective, like, you could do worse than thinking that he's going to do well here. I mean, this is obviously a course he's got a lot of history on. He plays well here, so yeah. I mean, if you're just getting a little bit of bump in odds because his results haven't been like awesome this year, then I think that he's like worth a hard look if you sort of want to take that route.
Yeah, I think so too. You never know. This is an interesting tournament. I can't imagine a lot of people are going to be tuning in Thursday, just the casual golf fan, to be watching the Honda Classic with these names, unless you're just a huge Sung Jae Im fan, which we are here at Clubhouse Picks. We love that guy.
Absolutely.
But this is going to be an interesting tournament. This is going to be for golf fans and sickos for real, while everybody else takes the week off. We've had a lot of entertaining golf. Genesis Invitational, the Waste Management Open in Phoenix. Those are some really, really interested, juiced up tournaments with big names, huge personalities. And now we got this weird Honda Classic in West Palm Beach. So should be a lot of fun. Let's get, Nate, to our locks here. These are going to be our 3 picks, either outright winner or top 5 or top 20 that you like, that you'd be giving out. And for our audience here, Nate will be providing his write-up tomorrow on GodzillaWins.com. Go to GodzillaWins.com for all of your sports analysis. We love the niche sports. So if you like UFC or soccer, Bundesliga, Premier League, you like golf, that's what we publish a lot of. We have NBA, we have college football when the season starts. We have college basketball. Yeah, NASCAR.
We need NASCAR writers.
That's absolutely true. If you follow NASCAR and you want to write about it, contact us at Godzilla Wins. We would love to have you write some NASCAR for us. We love the niche stuff. We love the niche sports. That's what really gets us excited here at Godzilla Wins. So go to GodzillaWins.com for all of your sports picks and predictions. Nate will have his golf prediction up for the Honda Classic on Thursday before the tournament begins. Nate, give us your 3 absolute locks for this tournament, the 3 guys you like for the Honda Classic.
So I've already talked about a couple of them, right? I love Hayden Buckley in this golf tournament. I just think the stats line up really well for him. He's a good young player that looks like he's ready to break out. I love Hayden Buckley. I talked about Van Rooyen already, and I talked about Russell Knox already. I think I'll probably leave it at those three as terms of just like guys that I like. Guys like Van Rooyen and Russell Knox maybe don't get overexposed on the outright odds, but play him top 5, play him top 20, play him top 10. Just to get your money back at least, for a top 20, you're still getting those guys at pretty good odds. So I would say those are the sort of three that I like, sort of sneaky picks. Like I said, I'm staying away from the top of the leaderboard. There are a bunch of guys at the top of this leaderboard that just look like traps to me, but I'm pretty confident taking those guys just because their ball striking chops are there. So I'm more comfortable with that.
Absolutely. I think those are 3 great picks. I am going to roll with my guys, Johnny Vegas, Harris English, and I believe I'm going to go with Lee Hodges. So those are my 3 right here, Johnny Vegas, Harris English, and Lee Hodges, all kind of swimming in the mid-range there. So that is going to do it for Clubhouse Picks. I am Jack Fredericks. I am the editor of GodzillaWins.com. That is Nate Perry. He is our senior analyst for all things football, golf, college hoops, NASCAR. The man does it all. If you can pick it, Nate probably has tried his hand at it in the past. We want to thank Nate for his picks today. Check back with us next week for the next tournament. Nate, what is the next tournament?
We are going to, I think.
I put him on the spot here. Yeah. I was about to do the outro, and then I threw him a curveball.
Arnold Palmer Invitational. I was right.
The Arnold Palmer Invitational. Right. Okay, so we'll be previewing the Arnold Palmer Invitational here next week. Have fun with the Honda Classic.
And possibly the Puerto Rico Open, a little side tour event.
There we go. There we go. 2 tours events in the same week. So everybody enjoy the Honda Classic. Make sure you hit the like button there if you're listening on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Godzilla Wins channel. Go to GodzillaWins.com if you have any interest in any of these sports. If you like us, please make sure to download, subscribe, listen to our podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're there. And thank you for joining us today.